the 222nd Block Talks, we speak with Amal Shehata, professor at the NYU Stern School of Business, who's elevating blockchain education for a new generation of leaders. I'm your host, Mauricio Magaldi, and this is Block Drops, your weekly digest on blockchain for business. These news are not a form of endorsement, sponsorship, or encouragement for consumption, and are meant for educational purposes only. All right, everybody. I'm here with Professor Amal Shehata, who's going to tell us who she is and what she does with blockchain. Finally, for a Block Talks. Welcome.
Thank you. It is such a pleasure to be here. I've been looking forward to this. My name's Amal Shehata. As you mentioned, I am a clinical professor of accounting at New York University Stern School of Business. I teach lots of different accounting classes to both our undergraduate and graduate students. And what we're here to talk about is a class I created about 5 years ago called Accounting and Blockchain.
I want to know all about the creation of that. So you're obviously interested and knowledgeable about it. How did blockchain enter your life? What was the first thing that came across your desk that you realized, oh my God, I need to learn this?
So I attended a conference, an academic conference or a round table where there was about blockchain technology and other emerging technologies years ago. And one of the panelists, who's a colleague of mine here at NYU Stern, was so excited and passionate about blockchain. And one of his predictions was this technology is going to be the biggest change to accounting and auditing that we have ever seen. In fact, it will eliminate the need for auditing in every way we think of it. And the conference itself was so fascinating, but I left that conference scratching my head, really questioning how that could possibly be, how his prediction could possibly come true. Because accounting, many people think of accounting as factual, right? 1 + 1 is 2. And actually, you'll be shocked to hear that nothing could be further from the truth. There is so much discretion and judgment in areas that are subjective in accounting. And I didn't buy into that. And so I ran into him in the elevator a few days later and I said, you know what? I don't see it. Until the accounting rules change, despite the immutable nature of blockchain and all of that record keeping, the accounting rules themselves require adjustments, nuance, estimating, and that's not as programmable. And he said, well, you know what? If you think that, then you teach the class, you create the class, and you challenge that. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to do that. And he said, and I will help. I'm actually very proud to share that NYU Stern created the first FinTech program. And part of it was because of that attitude where he really said, if you believe that, then you need to teach that class and I will help you. Because I didn't know anything about blockchain. So I said, you know what, I'm in. And that was the beginning.
Oh, I love that the start was the skepticism, because usually you get so passionate about the novelty, the possibilities, and you came in a skeptical angle and made it your own, which is so awesome. So how was the process of then going from skepticism to building the class? Because it's not trivial.
It's not trivial. It's not easy. As somebody said to me, once you start teaching, creating a new class in a novel subject, it's like giving birth. You're really creating something. So I really, one of the things I'll throw back to you, Mauricio, that is so wonderful about this group of people in this field is I reached out to my network and to their network, and everybody wanted to help me. Everybody wanted to help me, including you. And especially our mutual colleague and friend, Luisa Romero, who was my partner in creating this curriculum. So everybody helped me. And what we did was really break it down into the topics, because everything in the world, and maybe I'm being a little narcissistic, but everything in the world, there's some accounting element that touches it. And that's how we framed this class, thinking about the concept of tokenization of assets. When we talk about blockchain, there's not one blockchain and there's not one use case. So really breaking it down into all of this very interesting dimensions, stable coins, NFTs, Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies, CBDCs, utility tokens, DAOs, trying to really break down those elements or those use cases into what are they and where does the accounting or financial reporting impact this. And by the way, one of the really important elements of this class was not being the advocate. We did not just advocate and show passion. We said, question, show skepticism. When does it make sense? When doesn't it make sense, right? That's why we're in a university, to question. And my students are brilliant at that.
They are, because when I'm interviewed by them, they really bring the heat, and I get myself into some very deep corners of knowledge when the interviews happen. So they're well prepared.
I love to hear that. I love to hear that they don't make it easy.
No, no, no. So just for the sake of the audience, I usually volunteer to help the students in being, a market person that they can talk to about blockchain when they go through Professor Shehata's class, and it's been really a joy to work with them in that. So let's talk about them, because it's been quite a while. The market evolved, the generations changing. How did the people you teach about the subject have changed over the years into how prepared they come with pre-existing knowledge of blockchains, and what are their perspectives as these years have gone by and more people have gone through the class? What were the changes in the human capital that went through the class with you over the years?
Sure. Well, first, I have to thank you for serving as an interviewee for so many semesters. They vote you the coolest of all of our interviewees, so you
Oh, I'll
got that
take that to the
that
grave.
prize. You're our coolest. Um, it's been wonderful because the student who takes a class about blockchain is a different student that takes a class about accounting and blockchain. So I love seeing that curiosity about the financial reporting element of blockchain. And it's a very diverse group of students. We don't limit it to only students in the business school. We welcome students from all of NYU, including those who come from our international campuses who are visiting or studying abroad at Washington Square. It is an in-person class that takes place here in New York City. And we get a range of students, from those who are here in the business school studying accounting to those who are computer science to liberal arts. So a wide range. It tends to be people who are already curious, sometimes have their own startups and are already very involved, but usually they don't have any exposure to the accounting or financial reporting element. And so and quite honestly, all of us learn every semester, including myself and Louisa, because as you know, it's the topic is changing so frequently.
In that sense, this is an industry that has probably the largest amount of innovation per second. I want to be that wild, right? Um, how do you keep the course fresh with such a eventful industry where innovation is so rampant? I understand that the concepts are kind of crystallizing over the years. The taxonomy that did not exist when you started is probably firmer now in terms of the wider, not range of topics only, but the nature of the technology and what it can and cannot do, but still changing. So what's the process for you as an educator to keep things current, fresh, and then obviously make sure that they take away whatever the results they need to take away when the course is done?
Actually, it's a wonderful question. And it brings me back also to the origin of this class. When I first started creating this curriculum and I would reach out to people in industry, some people said, you know what, it's too soon. It's too nascent. It's too young. We don't have enough information. I said, you know what, I kind of think that's the time to do it. Let's watch this evolve. Let's grow with it. I think that's the exciting part. As an educator, my selfish side wanted this class so I could learn as well. So I tell the students every semester, it's like the wild, wild west. It honestly changes. I have a framework. Every week is devoted to a specific topic, whether it is about accounting, auditing and blockchain, or taxes and blockchain, or the financial accounting rules and how they've changed with blockchain, or the regulatory landscape. I have a framework or a specific theme, and then we update it. It never stays the same, which makes it challenging, but also what makes it so much fun. So much fun. The signature project is the interview you mentioned, and every semester we get new people. I mean, Mauricio, we have to keep you because you're so popular. But usually we switch it up, to be honest. And the students present their findings, and we all learn. We learn so much. We have interviewees from academia doing deep research. We have people who have startups. We have people who work at Coinbase. We have every part of this ecosystem you can imagine. Artists actually have artists who are involved in NFTs for using blockchain. So every element of it really comes into the classroom, and it's a challenge to keep it fresh because I am not an expert. I am really kind of a class ahead of them because it is changing so quickly. But they know that. And the students actually, I think, really appreciate how timely and current it is.
And how do you compare this particular discipline with the other disciplines that you also cover and the overarching course also covers, in terms of that? Like, we're talking about how dynamic this is, but what other aspects you could compare this particular class with the rest of the course? Because you said about unless accounting changes fundamentally, everything else remains the same because this is the discipline we're used to. Um, but even accounting is also changing. It's changing not only to accommodate new customs and new practices and new regulation, and even crypto is forcing even the Basel Committee to rethink some of the risk management practices, which then reflect into accounting rules for risk. So, how do you compare this particular discipline with the rest of them?
Well, actually, I love that question because this class is not just about being a class. In higher education, we have a responsibility where we are a neutral platform that we can bring stakeholders together to hash out issues. So when I first started teaching this class, I quickly realized the accounting rules that were created never anticipated this type of economic activity. But rules are rules. So even if you are transacting or investing in Bitcoin, you have to follow the rules. And the existing rules did not provide a faithful representation of a company's true asset. The rules didn't make sense, as particularly the US accounting rules, GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles. They didn't make sense. Most people agreed with that. So we were able at Stern, partially because of this class and my involvement with the fintech program, to organize two conferences, not only about accounting but about the greater. I organized it through our Ross Institute for Accounting Research as well as our Volatility Center for Risk, where we brought stakeholders together. We brought the standard setters of the accounting rules, representatives from them, from the FASB. We brought the audit firms. We brought industry to hash it out. And after, you probably are aware, the rules changed. The accounting rules in the US starting in 2025 have changed to recognize digital asset. They even gave it its own vocabulary word, which we didn't have prior, right? We had all different vocabulary labels for things like cryptocurrencies. We had a lot of labels, but now we have a new asset class on the books called digital assets. The accounting treatment is more meaningful, it's fair market value, and we didn't these old rules didn't make sense. So this class is more than just a class each semester to have a little fun. It's also about providing an opportunity for stakeholders to come together with something that's evolving to say, let's figure this out.
You mentioned FASB, and it gave me a little bit of a flashback because I worked at a US bank during the global financial crisis, and I did regulatory reporting at that said bank. And the first time I heard about the FASB was when all the balance sheet had distressed assets, and they had to be accounted for not by their fair market value, but the book to model was no longer mark to market. If it's a distressed asset, then it's mark to model. And that changed. And I'm like, oh my God, we can do that. So that was a little bit revolting at the time, because of the obvious underwhelming conditions of the entire market. But then obviously I kept track over the years, and then when that happened in crypto accounting, I'm like, oh, I'm familiar with this. I've seen this happen, and I'm glad that this is for a good reason this time
Yeah,
around.
this is for a good reason, and it's not over, right? The changes still need to continue. We have new questions that have come about. We've just started, but I'm proud of that. I'm proud that we were able to provide that platform. I mean, of course, there was many other reasons the rules changed, but it's nice. My mentor here at NYU Stern said, "Remember, this isn't just about the class. It's about really being part of this ecosystem and identifying opportunities where we need to be able to have, help people have their voice."
I need to react to this because you mentioned the power of the people in your opening statement about the course. You just mentioned the community and ecosystem. And I think this is one of the most underrated and probably more significant aspects of crypto and Web3 in general is how people can actually make a difference. Yes, it's about a new paradigm. Yes, it's about a new set of technologies, but the amount of work of great brains dedicated to this industry is one of the things that keeps me here, is having access to that type, the caliber of talent and dedication and passion that only makes it better. And I understand the market volatility, but I can't count in my 11 plus years in crypto when a year was worse than the year before. We haven't had that yet in many aspects. In working with people like you and your students, kind of keep it fresh for me that this is what we're doing. This is we're rewriting how businesses are acknowledged, how they exist, and how they transact in many layers, especially the human one. So thank you for that. This is really refreshing.
And I have to also mention, in academia, it's so wonderful to see the research that comes out. I have colleagues that I work with here who are renowned, leading researchers in this field. And I'll say, like Dr. Gerard Brennan, he researches accounting specific applications around blockchain, around these rules. And he meets with me every semester to update me, to share his research. I use it in my class to share with my students. Dr. Hannah Halliburta is one of our professors here, again, a leading researcher who brings a lot of information to this field that shapes it.
I love that. It is about the people for sure. Now, in your years teaching this class and beyond, and the work you do beyond that, um, what are the things that you saw come through either from the students or from the research that either validated and created more excitement for you to continue to do that, or even challenged that passion and commitment to this particular space? Are there any glaring examples of either ends of the spectrum that you might want to kind of point out? So, oh, this was something that really kept me going, and this is something that almost make me question why I'm doing this.
Both, for all of us, I think both. Well, because blockchain doesn't just mean one thing. So when I get excited is about all of the use cases around connecting people, just a strong technological framework for connecting people, making things easier, making government processes easier. For example, we use the example of Estonia having a lot of their citizen things run on blockchain. It's just a smoother, easier way to connect information and have that immutable record. Um, I've had students who get jobs in this market after the class, which I'm so proud of them. They get so excited and they stay in touch with the industry. Students here have started their own blockchain and fintech club, and again have gone into industry and then come back and hire more students. Where I am conservative, I'm an accountant. things like Bitcoin, they're not as, we don't have auditors. We don't have, the volatility of it. For all that I teach this class, I am very conservative in terms of the actual Bitcoin or cryptocurrency elements of it. It's not regulated, it's not insured, it's not audited. Those things, kind of make me a little bit nervous, the accountant in me and the ex auditor in me. But the other use cases get me very excited. And we explore both. We explore in the class the failures, including the Maersk IBM trade lens example that sounded like an ideal use case, a problem begging for blockchain as a solution, and it failed. And we really dig deep into why did it fail. A lot of it was about trust. People didn't trust. And how do you establish something at the onset where you get the buy-in? So we go into both. We go into the failures and the success and the what ifs. And my students come up with the best ideas. Honestly, the what ifs are the most exciting.
And what are the I don't know, top three what if examples you've had recently that were like, oh, this is a head scratcher?
Well, I have a student that's working on a project now. I probably shouldn't tell her idea, but she has a project that really she's trying to get her peers, young students at NYU, more involved. And it has to do with social media and blockchain and gathering people's opinions. And she's very excited about exploring that avenue. So we'll see.
Yeah, you mentioned social media in the context of blockchain. One of the things that I feel, and this is not just me, but there's like authors and investors like Chris Dixon from A16Z wrote on his book about the platform model, centralized, decentralized, and how the bait and switch of creating critical mass and then switching for an extraction model. We're seeing this firsthand right now as LinkedIn switches from regular creators to B2B sponsored content. And this being very damaging to quite a number of people that have made. I've been on LinkedIn for over 20 years, which is crazy if you think about it. And right now it's just unusable for someone who's an individual. And this is part of the centralization. So just not trying to influence anything from your student, but decentralized social media is something. It's one of those use cases that just needs to happen. As with trade lens, that was something that just needed to happen. Maybe finding other incentives architecture that trade lens couldn't, but decentralized social media could, would be something I would be dying to see and to adopt, because really I can't stand centralized social media anymore. It's just too skewed against the user. The user is the product, actually, right?
And why do they have to own that? Right? Why do they have to own that? Why do they own
Exactly.
your
Yeah, yeah.
profile?
And it's not only that; it's just the monetization of your data in general, which then speaks to something that I'm really concerned about, which is general privacy, right? Individual in that sense, and I think we lost that appreciation for privacy in the last 20 years. It's about time we claim it back.
Which actually is a big topic that comes up in my conversation in my class often. The privacy element. And that's also depends on where you're from, the expectation of privacy, depending on your jurisdiction and your country of citizenship. Some people expect it, some people don't, but it comes up often. And one of the things I always we discuss is, well, we're concerned about privacy, yet when you're walking around with your iPhone or you're Googling something, we have surrendered our privacy for that convenience. So there's always going to be this balancing act that we have to consider.
Exactly. In terms of the progression of what you're seeing in the industry and how students are coming, etc. Um, are there any particular concerns in the sense of the over financialization of the internet that crypto itself thrives on, promotes, but also hinders? Um, what are the aspects of the negatives of where the industry is and maybe headed to? Do you usually tackle, and what has been the response from students in that regard? Because as you said, you're a conservative person when it comes to investments and things like that. So I would hope there is some discussion on the seriousness of the things that not just blockchain, but permissionlessness ultimately enables. What is the context in which these conversations are happening, and what are some of the conclusions you and your students are getting to?
Well, one of the really interesting topics we cover every semester, sort of the regulatory landscape. And I'm in the United States, and this year has been a year of incredible radical change in our regulation around crypto. In the past, the US was considered unwelcoming, or maybe the better word is unclear. There were no clear regulations. There was a lot of litigation around companies that were involved in this space, to the point where a lot of the companies were like, we're out of here. You just don't know what you're getting in the US as much as in other countries. And other countries, by the way, it wasn't that they were so easygoing, it's that they were clear, very clear with their regulatory legal requirements. And uncertainty when you don't have clarity, it scares all of us, companies, individuals. This year, it's been a very big turn with in the U.S. They just passed the Genius Act, and that's around stable coins. We're seeing so much momentum, much more of a clear stance. The US really wanting to catch up, I would say, with regulatory hospitality towards crypto endeavors. So it's been very exciting to watch. Actually, it's been fun too, because I'll show videos or clips from last year where it was lawsuits and Wells notices and legal drama. And this year it is like, come on in, welcome. And the Genius Act is going to be a big game changer. I think it's going to really start to, roll out. We see it all over the world. The US, it's called the Genius Act, that's enabling stable coins. And it's all over the world. The US, quite honestly, is catching up, it appears. But that has been exciting. And Louisa and I teach that content together, and we really talk about how it has evolved and how certain countries have established sort of the framework and others are catching up. But watching that, teaching this class over a number of years and watching that evolution has been quite fascinating. And there's going to be implications when we have stable coins that require a reserve of treasury notes, US bonds, for example. Well, that's going to have implications for our bond market. And Mauricio, I assign actually one of your podcasts, the one about the stablecoin reserves. I love that one. Anybody listening, if you don't really understand stablecoin reserves, go back to that one. I have all my students listen to it because it's so clear. I use it every semester because it's very clear what the difference in the reserve requirements are, and showing how we went from that to now actually adopting that type of requirement is fascinating, and really thinking about the implications. When we start to become, as a country, more hospitable, what does that mean for the world? And I'm not an economist, but even in our little class, we can start to understand there will be implications, broader implications, including with currency, being able to use different currencies through the stable coins. So I'm very interested to see how it all unfolds. We just covered it a couple of weeks ago.
And thank you for that, because one of the things that I've been discussing both in the show and with friends, and in my day job, is how stablecoins made accessing US debt easy for anyone around the world that would not have that access. You can't buy $10 of US Treasury in Brazil. But if you buy $10 of a stable coin that is backed by US Treasury, in practice, is that's what you're doing.
Exactly.
Obviously, you can go into the details of whether this is yield bearing or non yield bearing and all the other nuances. But in the bottom line is that this is now commonplace, and it can be commonplace. And it's only through the power of the decentralization that we achieve that.
And it allows for cross-border transfer much more easily. Right now, if I want to send money to, family in another country, I have to pay expensive fees, there's delays, wait times. That will smooth all of that out. And it's not just the US. I mean, look at Hong Kong, Pakistan, all over the world, we're seeing movement in that direction.
Yeah, and it will bring questions about monetary policy or national debt and macroeconomy, waves from, one way or another, which then, and I think that the beauty of this is that blockchains and through stablecoins and other crypto assets are forcing us to rethink money as a technology, not just means of exchange, unit of account, and store of value, but
That's right.
money in motion, in economy velocity, in all the other things that are a byproduct of where we landed with the technology or with the paradigm. But now we have the means to have conversations like that. And I do hope that those are the conversations the course will elicit. Now, this is an industry or a sector in rapid evolution. If you told me 10 years ago I would be excited about regulatory progression, I would just laugh my eyes out. Um, Yet here we are. What is the one thing we must fix now, in your opinion, to avoid working another 20 years in the industry and realizing we didn't fix it and we're back to square one? What is that one thing and why?
I don't know if there's one thing. I think one of the challenges with adoption of blockchain is integration with legacy systems. It's much easier for a new company to start from scratch and build on blockchain or build it into their infrastructure than for an existing legacy company to have to suddenly, bring it into the mix and get rid of all of their old stuff. That's challenging. I think that's one of the challenges we face, but it's not one challenge. As you mentioned, monetary policy implications. If we start to adopt new forms of digital money transfer, like stable coins, like the Bitcoins and the Ethers and all of those, there are implications, world implications around that, economic implications. The accounting rules themselves, which is my area of focus, still have a lot of catch up to do. When we talk about how do we value assets? Now we're allowing fair market value for things like Bitcoin and the equivalent, but we're valuing them based on a market. Which market? It's not one market that closes at 4 o'clock and closes on Friday. Which market? There's thousands of exchanges and they're open 24/7. Which market? And Bitcoin may be readily accessible on many markets, but what about those that are lower volume trading? So we have a lot of questions that now have to be resolved, hopefully in a uniform, systematic way where we can consider the advantages and disadvantages. But as you said, it's moving so quickly, we don't always have time for that. And I show a picture when I was talking about the stable coins of like a race. Everybody's running, who's going to win the race? There always tends to be that element of pressure. So I don't know what the one pieces. I think there are a lot of elements. And again, it's not one blockchain. We're not just talking about crypto. There's NFTs, there's utility tokens, there's stable coins, security tokens. There's so many. Maybe that's part of it as well. We talk about blockchain as if it's one thing when really it's multiple asset classes. And each of them have their own nuances that we have to address and acknowledge.
Talking about that speed, 24/7, 365, all of that stuff, money and internet speed, what have you. How do you keep yourself healthy and sane working in this industry?
So, my day job is an educator. So I kind of have the best of both worlds, to be honest. I get to learn. I attend a lot of conferences. I like to watch my colleagues who do this research present their work. Um, but I'm just relaying it, right? I'm relaying it as an educator. I'm curating. I'm putting it together. I get to talk to interesting people like you who are really doing the heavy lifting, but my piece of it is really bringing people together, sharing what I've learned, and learning from my students. So I don't have that same pressure, to be honest. I get to enjoy learning, watching, observing, facilitating, but my day job doesn't rely on, what's the value of Bitcoin tomorrow.
Thankfully.
Thankfully, because again, as an accountant, that wouldn't work well for my sleep cycles.
Get you pulling your hair. And in terms of other than your students, and you, is there anyone that come to you directly and say, "Hey, I want to learn more about blockchain"? Do you onboard anyone into the industry other than welcoming the students and working with them across the discipline? Is there anyone reaching out to you in that sense? So Bitcoin has a new all-time high. How do I buy one? Is this something you do, and how do you do it?
So I do, yes, because I'm in this position, I do interact with many professionals around the world, which is so exciting. I don't give investment advice, and I'm very clear. I'm not an expert. I teach about this, but I'm not an expert. But I like to connect people. As I mentioned, many of my students are now working in the industry, and they pay it forward. They hire. I just had a student who got a job with a former alum who is working in the industry, and that brings me a lot of deep fulfillment to see those relationships that really persist. Um, so I love that. I love it when people reach out. I love to learn from them. I love to connect with them. Usually I invite them to be an interviewee for my students, when they're really involved in this space. And it gives me an opportunity when I get those cold calls to learn more. That's a privilege.
It is, and I feel that working in this industry is a privilege. I remember the early days of the internet in the early '90s, where I was a kid and I was just learning how to operate a modem.
The dial-up days.
The dial-up modem, yes, exactly. And now I'm in this position of having the opportunity to help build the new era of the internet. And to me, it's just it's exciting. It's daunting as well, overwhelming at times, but it is a privilege. We don't get to we get to do this, right? And every time some things get hard and complicated, I have my wife would come to me and I'm like, oh, I'm stressing out, and it's just like, that's the life you chose. So we're kind of approaching the end of our time, so I want to be respectful of that. How can people learn more about you, the work you do, the school, get in touch, maybe become a student? What's the path there?
I'm at NYU Stern. We have one of the strongest fintech programs in the world. And we have actually a master's degree in fintech. I serve as a faculty advisor for one of those student groups as well. And just look me up. We're here. And we're an international university. We have campuses all over the world, and our student body reflects that. It's just a wonderful, wonderful thing to see.
Awesome. Professor Shahata, once again, thank you so much. And I do hope to run into you in real life at some point. Thank you.
Yes. And Mauricio, thank you, because it's people like you who have helped strengthen my class where students get real world access to people really rolling up their sleeves and doing the heavy lifting. So, right back at you.
Thanks. It's an honor. Catch us online. We're on Instagram at BlockDropsPodcast, on Twitter at BlockDropsPod or 0x Mauricio. We're on Lens at blockdrops.lens. We have a newsletter on LinkedIn. Write to us at blockdropspodcast@gmail.com, and you can listen to the BlockDrops podcast at Spotify, iColab, Faberbun Tech, and all of the other major streaming platforms. Yay! Shout out to Professor Shehata. It's such a pleasure to finally have you on the show. And shout out to my friend Luisa Romero, who made this initial connection possible. Thank you so much. Don't forget to leave the ratings on your favorite player and check out the merch store at blockdropspodcast.xyz. This is all for today. Stay rare, stay weird. LFG.